everybody. We put an extra layer of technological challenge into our live stream tonight with Chris and I both working together to make sure that this can get broadcast back to our ridings. So if you can see me and you can hear me, it's awesome. Stay tuned. We're just going to get things back up and running, and we're going to look forward to getting your questions tonight.
Yeah, it seems to be live. Is it live, Matteo?
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
think we're back now.
Good job,
Okay.
Mateo.
Okay, I'm just gonna leave it. I can't keep sharing this. Well, I mean, I can't, but yeah, I will share it. Hold on. Hold on. We'll go back to try it again.
I'll share it again too.
Yeah, just in case.
No problem.
It's just kind of like that. What am I doing? Public. Post. I don't know what I'm doing. I find that the technology is phenomenal. But yeah. Oh, I did see. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so I'm good on my end. You
Excellent.
good?
Perfect.
Excellent. Hello again
Okay.
for the first time, or maybe the second.
Well, we started,
Yeah.
and I suggest we just continue because we might have more glitches. It could be
Mhm.
an interesting night for that, you know? Hi. So,
Yeah, so I guess I could just continue. I was talking
yeah,
about how
or
the campaign's going, or did you
Yes.
want to
sure.
introduce again?
No, I'm not going
Yeah.
to introduce. Keep going.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So yeah, so the campaign's been going great. The winter time has been a challenge getting the signs in the ground and walking around door to door has been a little bit of a challenge, but it's also been rewarding. People seeing us out there trudging through the snow and in the cold, going to their doors to talk to them about the issues they're facing. I think they really appreciate it. So a lot of people saying, "I can't believe you guys are out here doing this," and that's warms your heart a little bit. And I really enjoy talking to people at their house, at their doors about what they're facing in the community when it comes to issues like healthcare, affordability, schools, things like that. Um, but yeah, it's been a very positive campaign. I see an upswing in momentum from this riding, anyways. Your neighboring riding. I feel like compared to 2022, there's been significant more support from volunteers, from sign requests, from just people giving their support at the doors. So I'm super happy about that, and I'm excited for the future of Eastern Ontario when it comes to the NDP. I think people are looking for a real change around here. So
Yeah. How about
Chris,
you,
I
Jeremy?
100% I
Yeah.
100% agree with you, Chris. Like as we've been going door to door, we've been really trying to get back to the grassroots of contacting people. And one of the things for us is, of course, is because it was a winter campaign, we opted to, instead of going for signs, to go directly to as much messaging to the riding as we possibly could, so that that flyer would give everybody the chance to come into these live streams and hopefully take a chance to participate and ask the candidate their questions. But we have been staying boots on the ground, trudging through the snow. And I really do echo like the enthusiasm at the door is fantastic. I think it signals that people are ready for a change. And the conversation that comes from the NDP platform with Merit Styles is really something that's resonating with people every chance I go. You always kind of fear whether or not there's going to be some sort of negative conversation. But the truth is, anyone from any stripe, any walk of life, anything, they're showing enthusiasm for something different and something new.
yeah,
So, so,
definitely.
so keep going.
Oh, I was just gonna say you're absolutely right. It's funny sometimes, when you're wearing all the orange and you're carrying your signs and pamphlets and everything like that, people judge you right when you get to the door and they're like, "Ooh, I'm not so sure about the NDP." But as soon as you start talking platform and what we're gonna do for people and the ideas of Marit Styles and the NDP, they usually warm up and listen to you. So it's been great.
Well, it's a terrific platform, so it's kind of once they know it, what's not to like, right?
Yeah.
So what has been the biggest challenge? I mean, you know, in the last 3 weeks for you
Jeremy,
guys?
yeah, I'll let you take that one.
Well, if we talk about challenges, of course, we touched on, we talk about the weather. It's very difficult. It's not a lot of fun to ask somebody to try to keep their door open for a 20 or 30-second pitch when the weather is just not been really favorable. So I've always really been appreciative of people trying to work through that challenge with me. And and that's, I think, the shortness of the campaign. Questions about where their polling station is, where's their voter card. It's going to be very challenging for people to be able to do or get the information they want, learn the things they want to do to make an informed decision, and know where they need to go because it was such a snap election and such a sudden end to the campaign. The good thing is through that challenge is we've been able to really get the word out about just how hard Elections Ontario was working. In our riding, it's down at the Cornwall Square where you can still go, although the advanced polls have closed because that was so brief, you still can get down to a central area within Cornwall at least and still show up with just your ID, your name, your address, proof of yourself so that you can vote without your voter's card and get the job done. Which, I mean, as a challenge as it is, at least we can see a positive side as people get into election day.
I
Yeah,
got my voter card.
I
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah.
really quickly say I did vote today.
Hmm.
At Cornwall Square, and for anyone wondering if it's going to take a long time, it was super quick. I was in and out in 5 minutes.
Yeah. I voted with
Nice.
my son Max. He's 19. It was the first time we've ever voted, and I was such a proud papa. He felt good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine your first time voting and you get to vote for your dad? How
I told him I don't
wonderful
care who he votes for. I'm
for
proud that he's there.
That's got to be a good feeling, though. Our voting location is a central location in Brockville. If anyone's watching in our riding, it's on Parkdale Avenue. I don't know the exact address, but you can check Elections Ontario.
Absolutely.
And yeah, just highlighting again, you don't need your voter card. I think they've been very late getting out. Some people are still receiving them or not receive
Mhm.
them, and you don't need it, just your ID, driver's license, whatever, a government issued ID, and you can vote. So
Yeah, it has
you
to
want to
have
come?
has
Oh,
to
go
have a
ahead.
picture. It has to have a picture on it. And if you
Right.
don't have a picture ID, bring your ID and bring a utility bill that
Yep.
has your address.
An official piece of mail is an acceptable proof of address, and then something with your face on it.
Yep.
Perfect. I don't know why my thumb keeps coming up there, but I'm just going to leave it there because it keeps. Yeah, so back to the challenges on the campaign. I agree with Jeremy. Getting people to keep their doors open while you give them the little pitch is a challenge. But it's also an opportunity because a lot of people have been inviting me inside their house to talk, which feels even more, comfortable for them, and they allow me to talk a little bit more. Although that is a challenge of mine is leaving the doors quick enough to hit enough doors in a day, right? You don't want to spend 10, 15 minutes at each door. You're not going to get too far. And then another challenge that you didn't mention, at least on my side, I think is fundraising is a little tough early in the year. People just got through the holiday season. Their credit cards are maxed for Christmas. They're sort of rebudgeting and trimming things, and fundraising can be slow this time of year. So it's still been good, and we're lucky that we're also seeing some momentum on the upswing of like the popularity around here. But it's still a challenge.
What are
Yep.
people telling you guys at the doors? Jeremy, we'll start with you.
Oh, sure. So a lot of what I'm hearing at the door is a lot like basically like when we talk about local stuff, the stuff the NDP is talking about, like what Mayor Stiles' plan, the big three, when we talk about healthcare, when we're talking about cost of living, we're talking about education, it immediately resonates with everyone. Everybody needs a doctor. Everybody has someone who's in school. Everybody knows there's something wrong with the price of groceries. There's something wrong with the cost of rent. So it's really resonating with a lot of people just to try to talk about the things that the NDP considers priorities.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, for me, it's mostly been, pretty close between healthcare and affordability across the board. It really depends if you or someone in your family's being affected by the poor healthcare service in our province. If you don't have a doctor, it's pretty much everyone's top priority because, what good is money and wealth and all that stuff if you don't have your health. You're going to have a pretty difficult life. So people are focused on being able to see a doctor, maintain their health, get treatment when things fall apart in the hospitals, and they're not able to do that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely top priority. And I just wanted to mention, like, one thing that's not a top priority at the doors is our response to Trump's tariffs. The reason that this election has been called was supposedly to give a strong mandate to respond to Trump's tariffs, but I would say maybe 2 to 5% of the people that I talk to at the doors are concerned about that issue. They're mostly concerned about what's falling apart, our basics.
Yeah.
I I hear it at the door too. Trump steals a lot of oxygen in a campaign that is so preciously short, and it is a challenge. So when people talk to it, I hear about it. But one of the good lines I like to think about when I try to give people hope in the face of something so chaotic is just, okay, let's think less about North and South. Let's think about East to West. So when the Trump conversation comes up, there's still a positive result that comes out of this. The reestablishment of the Canadian identity, people talking about just how proud they are to be Canadian, just how strongly they identify with it, and then building that into like the government initiatives now, where we're going to be using the government to drive this change by compelling them to make sure they use local small and medium businesses for supply, by making sure that we all come together and work together on breaking down barriers for interprovincial trade. These are the sorts of things that like at any time it was going to be great. We got to thank that guy for anything. He's making us discover our strength, and that's really positive for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's only going to make us stronger for the future. So,
Yeah, and I think there's like a lot of people who talk about the strong national identity that's happening right now. A part of that is that we place a lot of priority on stuff like public health care. That's how we separate ourselves from the United States.
Yeah. The NDP brought that to us,
Hmm.
and it's going to take the NDP to make sure
Yeah,
we
I
commit to
saw,
it.
I
Yes.
saw, I think Stefan said just the other day when we were doing one of these streams that it was Tommy Douglas's birthday just a few days ago, and he is the
Yeah.
father of healthcare in Canada.
Yep.
yeah. Yeah,
If
I've been using
if
that line a lot this campaign that the NDP brought us healthcare and we're going to be the ones to save it too. So,
Well, if I can just interject here, I think that the NDP and the Greens are the only party that have committed to keeping our public health care and not increasing the privatization of healthcare. And we
yeah.
really, that's a huge danger for Canada because the American companies are just waiting to come in and monetize,
Mhm.
Oh,
Canadian
definitely.
healthcare.
Mhm.
yeah.
It's and especially, like these being pulled in these two different directions by having these two different systems, it just further stretches the resources that the public healthcare system has. So like when I've had the chance to, when I've been meeting, we've gone to an RNAO event and I've had the chance to meet with some of the nursing students at our local college, and those are some real concerns of theirs. So luckily with the chance for the NDP, we can address that and make sure that they don't suffer burnout, that they get fair pay, fair work, and that we focus up back on this public system that everybody needs. It's just a fair play for fair game.
Just like, healthcare is something that we take for granted in Canada, but really it's one of the underpinnings of a healthy and successful society. So how,
Hmm.
like, because we're both talking about it, how are your respective areas managing currently? Like what's happening in your area, Chris, and what's happening here in
Yeah,
terms
it's
of,
probably similar issues. I mean, we
yeah,
had I'm in Kempville, so I don't keep an eye on the Brockville General Hospital and how frequently they've closed, but the Kempville emergency room had to close, whether it was last year or the year before, due to lack of staff. So, you know, I don't know if you guys know my story or about why I got into politics, but I suffered from a lengthy bout of Lyme disease. I almost died. During that time, my wife had MS, and we were in and out of hospitals all the time. So when I came to Kempville, it was to slow down, try to live off the land a little bit, but also be close to a hospital and good health care. So I moved right near the Kempville Hospital. So when it started to close, the emergency room, it really, that's a very negative thing. But also too, just access to primary care around here is very difficult. We've had since I moved here about 5 or 6 years ago, we've had 4 or 5 doctors shut down their practice and just leave their clients stranded or their patients stranded. So we're really trying to attract new primary care. We were successful with a municipal grant to attract 2 of them, I believe, over the past couple of years, and I hope we can do more, either as a province or continue municipally if the province doesn't want to play along. And that just clogs up our emergency care, right? If you can't get
yeah.
access to primary care and get your prescriptions filled and just minor things checked out, A, you're going to have to clog up the ER to do it. And B, you might just not choose not to do it because ERs are designed to be exactly that, emergency care. They're not supposed to be looking after patients on an ongoing basis. So they don't really have the skills or the
Yeah.
ability to do that. So you go there, you get given, something to get you through the next day. And if you're not dying, they just send you home. And if you want further care, you got to wait another 12 hours.
Mhm.
And, my wife and I experienced a lot of that. So I know what people are going through. And we got to get everybody some access to primary care.
I'm sorry to hear that, Chris, because yeah, down here in this, well, in the Cornwall area in particular, so the Winchester Hospital and the Alexandria Hospital suffered through closures, exactly like you're speaking to, and a lot of the initiatives that are trying to stop that clock and create what they say is a more positive result, are unfortunately are just more propagation of hallway medicine, which we know is occurring in our region. It's just something that's just not part of the plan, not what somebody's expecting when they're trying to get treatment. And it's tough to use the word crisis, but it's very true. In the Cornwall area, we've lost almost all of our clinics. We have one left, one public healthcare clinic that is available to
Wow.
people, and it is difficult to get seen. We urgently, desperately need the NDP plan to bring the public healthcare spaces, those communal doctor spaces, and focus them on public interests in order for us to be able to build back what people need.
Yeah, I'd like to, Louise, for you to comment a little bit, because Louise works with the Cornwall Health Coalition. So she
Mm.
sees, a lot of, the impact, and she is also seeing what is happening in terms of privatization.
We certainly have privatization in our area,
Yeah,
mostly in the area of cataract surgeries. You know that the provincial government has encouraged many areas to privatize cataract surgeries. The price they pay to these private clinics is twice what they pay our public hospitals. So it's costing more. And then on top of that, a lot of these private clinics will add fees. There's a lot of, what are they calling it, untruths going around about waiting times for cataract surgery. I have a lot of friends who are my age, at the age that cataract surgery is becoming more necessary. And they're told sometimes that there's a 6 month wait when truly there isn't that long a wait. The wait is more like 6 weeks. And so these people are encouraged to spend 3, 4. And I had one friend pay up to $8,000 because she could not believe me that she would be seen in less than 2 years, because that's what her doctor had told her, that it would be a 2 year wait for cataract surgery, which is not true. The waits are not that long. And there's no reason, except that the hospitals aren't being funded, that they couldn't be held in our hospitals. We have waiting rooms that sit empty before 10 o'clock, on weekends, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the only reason we're not doing all those hip surgeries and knee surgeries and cataract surgeries that people desperately need is because the hospitals are not being funded for that number of surgeries by the provincial government. And that's shameful, because they're willing to pay these private companies more money to do the same
same thing.
surgeries, and to have our citizens paying out of pocket, many senior citizens who don't have that extra $3,000, but their eyesight is so precious to them that they're not willing to wait, or they have to believe their doctor, and that's what they do. So that needs to stop in Ontario. There is no reason for privatization of anything in Ontario if we have the proper funding. There is the capacity. We have doctors who would be willing to work in the evening, who would be willing to work on the weekend if there's funding in the hospitals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Matteo.
and sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah,
comment on that before we move on.
sure.
It goes back to what I was saying, is if you don't have your health, money is almost worthless. So when you're in a health crisis like that, or you're losing your eyesight, people, they feel desperate and they'll pay whatever it takes. And that's why it's so important. Like when had Lyme disease, there was a treatment in Germany. It was like $40,000. I was ready to do it. I was just, saving up. I didn't have the money and I was going to do it. But that's why it's so important that we save our public health system and we don't allow privatization, because people will pay whatever it takes to save their health, and it's just so predatory. So
It's
It
a
is.
terrible time to
Yeah.
try that kind of a thing. Absolutely. It's just not
Yeah.
an Ontario value. It's not the place I grew up.
I also just think like you know, it's people are judging the way the healthcare system is right now, saying it's failing and using this as an argument against public healthcare. But the truth is, this is public healthcare being provided by a party that wants healthcare to be privatized. So I don't
yeah.
think you're getting the true scope of what public healthcare is.
It's
And
something
I
we do
Exactly.
together that we can't do alone.
There's just another comment I'd like to make as well. Uh, our system is not broken. If you are in, having a heart attack or whatever serious condition you present to the ER, people are very quickly put through. People are very well cared for. The workers in the hospital go above and beyond to help people and to make sure they are safe. So, we may be comparing it to the way it might have been 10 years ago when there were less wait times, when the clinics didn't close, all those kinds of things. But I would not say that the system is broken. The system needs improvement and the system needs to go away from privatization. But, our workers and our people in the hospital, really do work very hard. And, the
Yeah.
doctors as well, they're doing what they can do to help people. We need to help the general practitioners with you know, uh, more group settings, lowering the paperwork, maybe better apps for them to fill out their work, those
Yep.
kinds of, help that they need. But, certainly, I use the healthcare system in the fall, and I could not say anything was bad about it, except that I did sleep in the hallway a couple of nights.
For the folks that are following us be in the chat right now or in the live stream, I just love to give you something that you take an opportunity to Google and then come back to us if you're interested to ask more questions. It's Bill 192. So Bill 192 was an initiative by the NDP to try to work with the government we had prior to this election to address nurse to patient ratios. And this is something that the nurses were telling us when I had a chance to meet with a representative from ONA today to receive a banner to show solidarity, the signatures of the nurses and the need for them to have nurse to patient ratios so that they can do their job safely and effectively. And the NDP was trying his hardest to play ball with the government we had to try to make simple common sense changes to make their job better. So unfortunately that defeated. The positive message when you come out of that is to know that is on the plate. That is on the agenda to immediately get into place. These are the types of supports that nurses deserve. When we say we're going to hire 15,000 new nurses, 3,500 new doctors, this is how we're going to do it, by making sure that we respect these workers, fair wages, wage parity, so that where they end up in the system, they're going to get that opportunity. And that when they are in their job, we are making the real effort to prevent burnout and to respect the skill of their profession so they can focus on patients. Because you're absolutely right, Louise. Our nurses are fantastic. Now, Mateo, was there a question in the chat that we haven't
Yeah.
Yeah,
gotten to?
I do a
I'm
few
so
have
sorry.
I've gotten a few questions in chat now.
Okay.
So I'll go over this one first from Christopher Cameron, who says, "Will you commit to saving money and decreasing wait times for Ontarians?" And he suggests deny Quebec patients in Ontario healthcare institutions as up to 40% in some institutions, competing directly for limited services, as well as subsidizing Quebec patients by nearly 25%.
Well, hi, Chris. The interesting thing about that conversation is it's not something to which I'm aware. So I'm never going to pretend to have an answer to a question to which I don't know. I think in terms of robustness of our healthcare system, the NDP initiatives are simply to make it stronger, period, right from the onset. And there can only be a benefit to all. To remember that the healthcare is for all of us is an important part of this discussion. We're not trying to fight over scraps between one or another. We're trying to make sure that we pick everybody up and grow together.
And of course, you remember, Chris, that portability is part of the Canada Health Act, that you have to be able to take your health care from one province to the other.
Yeah, and I agree with Jeremy. It's important that all Canadians have access to healthcare. If there's situations where, there's not any fairness in between provinces, then sure, we can look at making things more fair. But I don't think limiting access for people from Quebec to get treatment in Ontario if they need it is the right answer. So, like Jeremy said, just making the system stronger, making sure we have it as efficient as possible. We have all the new apps for the doctors, and we invest properly for proper care. And I'm sure if there's any issues between provinces, we can make those more
Can
fair.
work together.
Yeah.
Mateo still has
Yeah,
questions.
I still have two. The
Yeah.
next one comes from Jacqueline Milner, who says, the Conservatives say they've invested over $31 million in our hospitals in Cornwall, Winchester, and Alexandria. Your thoughts on this, please?
Well,
Well,
most
if I
certainly. So there have been promises made. As we've always seen, the Conservative government has been making announcements as investments are going to be getting in. I think the challenge is that it's just like when we were speaking in the debate. You give a number, and whatever it is, you know when you go to the hospital, it's not enough. Wherever this value came from, wherever this investment came from, it's great because desperately needed. But in respect to the infrastructure in the building of the hospital, let's not forget about the people working in there themselves. You do not forget Bill 124, which, the number there is 4 million. $4 million suing the government to use some common sense and respect the bargaining rights of the workers. This is what's led to the shortage and what we can see now when nurses are suffering burnout and leaving that industry. It's very hard on them. Tanis had come in to speak with us on one of the other live streams about these challenges, these burdens. It's very difficult to be a nurse. The last thing you need is extra burdens placed upon you. So their investment is desperately needed, and you will see more with an NDP government. There's no contrast there. But where it goes, how it's spent, and how much it is going to have to change.
I want to add something there. Louise and I both know this. Ontario still invests less per capita than any other province. And while, yes, they can amortize the costs over a large population, it's still, we have the least investment in healthcare. And as you said, Jeremy, we can see it's not working. I mean, something's wrong. Either there's not enough money, which is, I think, big part of the problem, and maybe it's not managed properly. I don't know.
well,
Well, I
sometimes
think it's like Jeremy was saying, the Conservatives, when they make big investments like that, it's usually to build the infrastructure of the hospital, like a new room or even a new hospital or a new
Okay.
wing. But they're not putting it in the proper places because we have large enough hospitals. We just don't have enough staff.
Yeah.
And, you need to invest in the staff. And unfortunately, that means wages and benefits and attracting good people. And that's something that the Conservatives are typically against. So, we have empty operating rooms. We don't need to invest in building new infrastructure. We need to invest in the people and the workers.
Yeah. Louise, you wanted to say something?
just also, sometimes they, promise this money and it doesn't actually flow to those areas. So,
Mhm.
that's another issue. And the other issue, of course, is, we've come through a period of high inflation. And over those years, the grants and the operating grants did not keep up with inflation. So at this point, many hospitals, which had never happened in Ontario, many hospitals were in deficit positions because
Yeah.
of that. And they've also had to spend a lot of money on agency nurses because they didn't have the ability to hire permanent nurses. And agency nurses cost much more than the regular employees.
Yeah. Great points.
Mateo, you still
Yeah.
have more questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have one question left. To shift the conversation a little bit to more cost of living stuff, we have a question from Stefan Peters, who says, homelessness encampments being dismantled punitively with no solution offered is a disgrace that's been going on for too long. How can these people be helped, please?
Chris, I'd love to invite you to go first. If you let me talk too much, I'll talk all night. But by all means, I'll jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think clearing encampments with no solution is a disgrace, and it's something that should never be done. We should look for solutions first before we go in and bulldoze people's belongings and basically arrest them if they don't follow orders. So we got to stop doing that. But when it comes to solutions, the NDP, Marit Stiles and the NDP is putting forward, I believe it's 60,000 supportive housing units across Ontario, and they're going to provide wraparound services like mental health, addiction treatments, and things like that to help people get back on their feet again. But when it comes to homelessness in general, I think, if we were to go and get people upstream before they fall in the stream is mostly about wages. So making sure that employers are paying appropriate wages and, minimum wage is increased to a living wage, things like that. So people have the ability to maintain one or two emergency costs in their budget without going homeless. So there's a statistic going around. I think it's 40 or 50% of the homeless population. If they were to just receive $1,000, or I think maybe 1,000 or 2,000 right before they went homeless, they would have never became homeless in the first place. And
Yeah.
to do that is much more cost effective than it is to get them back off the street once they're there. So just working for more wages, trying to get benefits in place to stop people from becoming homeless when they're on the edge. And then if they do become homeless, providing them with supportive housing, doctors, mental health, and social workers to get them back on their feet. So that's the things that the Ontario NDP, is putting on the table.
Does that
Yeah.
include, I'm just gonna jump in, does that include things like ODSP, increasing ODSP?
Oh yeah, great point. Yeah,
Oh,
so
absolutely.
ODSP and OW is a big part of that. There's a lot of people in our communities right now that are being forced to live in poverty just because of an illness or an injury that they never asked for. So it's hard enough to live life when you're disabled. I couldn't imagine trying to live life disabled and being forced into poverty. It's a disgrace, and the Ontario NDP has proposed that we double instantly the rates of ODSP to help people out. So I'm super happy and proud to support a party that's put all these platforms on the table.
It's absolutely something that, like, because this is a very good point. Doubling these benefits is it just the start of the conversation that basically when we were criticized, like you're just not keeping up with rapid inflation and the cost of living, that people they rely on these. Now, Stefan is as a friend and also an activist, and it's nice to see again, Steph. And I understand how strongly feels about this because he's come to us before to talk about universal basic income, which is exactly along the lines Chris was saying, is that little bit of cash was everything those people needed just to be able to stay where they were, to be able to have that roof over their head. Is when it comes down to it, that's the difference between poverty and comfortable living sometimes. And the universal basic income was cut short by the conservative government. One of the first promises they broke, which brings a lot of frustration because many people who are within the NDP knew that they could prove, just needed the data to finish the study to show just how beneficial universal basic income could be. And it's really good that we took a time to talk about the 60,000 new houses, the initiative to make sure that when we talk about the rest of the conversation through today, that the people in the encampments get the support they need. Unfortunately, when I had a look at my opponent's flyer, sitting there shaking Doug Ford's hand, on the back of it, in the last line was, we're going to make sure that we get the druggies out of the parks and make sure they go to jail and criminalize the get the needles out of the parks so your kids can play again. As you couldn't be more tone deaf when these are the people that's we're speaking to it, because we have fairly rural ridings and people think it's an urban problem, but the truth is that the data is out there that this is a percentage of the population, and rural homelessness is skyrocketing. These people are just trying to find some place to shelter together, and to criminalize it and to try to put them in jail. I believe I've read the studies that show it's actually more expensive to try to use jail to fix homelessness. It makes no sense.
Oh, it's way
It's
more
not
expensive.
just inhumane, it's wasteful
Mhm.
when we can double down and when we invest in our healthcare and have the system working like it should be, the things that will actually break the cycle for these people to get them to address their addiction, get help from like their mental health support that they need, and a place from which they can start over and start contributing back to society and feel good about it. It's not all just a feel good feeling because we want to do right for the world, though it is. It actually makes fiscal sense. So it's a complete opposite the government we have and a new government with the NDP, the way that it would go forward. And in so many ways, it's just better.
What about moving along sort of, how does the NDP plan to tackle the housing crisis? So beyond supportive housing, which is excellent, what about affordable housing, rents, etc.? Chris?
Sorry, I had some sound like playing in the background there, so I didn't hear the first part, but I think you were talking about affordability and affordable housing and rents and
Yeah,
things like that. Okay,
yeah,
perfect. So yeah, so the Ontario NDP is putting on the table real rent controls
yeah.
to eliminate the 2018 decision by the Ford Conservative government to allow rents to increase to whatever the landlord decides. Also, building homes is, I think, the biggest solution to affordable housing and rents in general, right? If we can flood the supply side of the market, the prices are going to come down. That is a challenge. There's not enough tradespeople to build enough houses that we need. But I think also too, there's a big opportunity in the tariff conversation to potentially pivot some workers affected by in industries by the tariffs to retrain them to build the Ontario that we need. So we need more affordable homes. I think we put 1.5 million new homes in our platform. And we're going to need people to do those. And our schools and universities need saving too. They're downsizing, they're cutting staff, they're cutting classes. So if we can use this tariff thread as an opportunity, we can really hit a lot of issues all at the same time. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, Jeremy, you could probably talk more about the rent controls and protection for renters and things like that.
The plan now has a name, which is great because now that we've been able to start to talk in depth, the red control is a very important thing that we need to address. I find basically a lot of the changes that have been made recently are creating a very complicated system so that people don't have confidence in where they are renting as to whether they have security to where they're going to stay. Loopholes are being abused, rent eviction, and other types of ways of forcing people out of their house or tricking them or forcing them to pay more. These are the sorts of things that the NDP plans to come in to address to make tenancy more fair.
And the a big part of affordability for a lot of people, if you do grocery shopping, which I do, is just the insane cost of food.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that's a complex issue also, right? But
Yeah.
on the table immediately, the NDP has put forward a grocery rebate program where families can receive up to $120 a month to cover some expenses with their grocery bill in the short term while we try to work to fix the issue long term. So, you know, the issue long term is we don't have a lot of competition in our grocery sector in Ontario, and we really need to work to bring in more competition and break up the large companies as best we can. So I don't know about you, Jeremy, but myself, I'm very much a pro small business, anti huge corporation kind of guy. I feel like these corporations don't have the same buy-in to our communities, and they don't have the same ethics and moralities that a small business owner that lives in the community would have. And I feel like big corporations like Amazon come into our communities, you know, shutting down mom and pop shops and not paying their fair share towards our society is a bad look. So I'm really just pro small business, and if we can work to bring in more mom and pop grocery stores, more smaller options of everything to compete, I think that'll help with the food prices to come down.
It's a real challenge because what happens is a lot of these corporations, they're still, you end up with a tangled relationship because it's still local people who are working there trying to make it work, but there's no fairness. And what I like about the NDP's initiative here is not just that the grocery rebate is going to be a direct benefit to put food back on the table that people need it, to immediately give them help to get those groceries that they need, but that when the watchdog appointment comes in, they institute the concept of fairness, which within fair play, small businesses and medium businesses can compete. That watchdog with the intention of making sure that the price is put up, it has to be disclosed in the same way a sale tag goes on to show what's been happening across the week. I believe it's within 2%, which if you can think about it, even just $3.49 to $4.49 for the box of crackers that my son goes through like every other day. These are significant. This is the sort of thing that stops the gouging. This is the sort of thing that creates the honesty and the fair play, the fair opportunities for people, and makes it better at the grocery till.
Well said.
If I can
Matteo.
just make
Oh.
another plug for the education system, I think, in years past, of course, there used to be, family studies, home economic courses that the children had to take in grade 9, and that taught basic
Yeah.
cooking. And I think that's an art being lost in our society in general. A lot of people don't know how to cook. And so they buy prepared, more expensive foods that do have more preservatives and things like that, instead of, eating in seasoned food, and having turnip instead of, avocado maybe.
Trust the teacher to have a plan, right? Let's make sure we have a class for this. Only
think
just
that's-
makes sense.
I think that's an important point, that touches on a lot of issues too, because if people are stuck eating prepared meals that aren't as healthy, they get health issues. And guess what? That clogs up our hospitals even more. So a big thing I like to talk about is preventative healthcare. And, there was a lot of that when I was growing up, like the food pyramid and talking about diet and stuff like that. But I think maybe the government, because the government's job is not really to like say you have to eat this or you have to do that and implement laws and all that stuff. It's really to just nudge the population along in a certain direction, right? And nudge by nudge, they get there kind of thing. So I think more awareness campaigns and promotion about the benefits of eating fresh at home and cooking your own meals and sustainability and things like that, that could go a long way.
As a food motivated individual, I always have to try to make sure I'm laughing because I'm thinking to myself, I was like, yep, I do quantity. I better try to invest a little bit in quality just for my long-term sake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was a big way that I recovered from my illness. So the Lyme disease, everything, I got bit by a tick in Texas and it gave me this allergy to red meat and dairy. So I had to
Okay.
figure out my diet. I had to figure out new ways to get like proteins and different things. And just by customizing that, I really realized how important a healthy diet was, and your gut microbiome and all that stuff to your mental health, your physical health, everything. It's all sort of tied together, right? And I think the society that we've kind of lived in for a little while, the individualism and the sort of compartmentalizing everything, it's got people thinking like, my mental health is different from my physical health, which is different from what I eat and all that stuff. But it's really all so tied together. So,
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And it's unfortunate, but this also requires, that people are taught, right? They need to learn it. They need to learn how to do it. And they need to learn to get into healthy habits.
I also think price is a huge thing because we can sit here and say just make healthier choices, but the sad truth is a lot of unhealthy things are the cheapest things to get. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't
yeah.
always
Yeah.
afford the
You're right.
healthiest possible choices.
I
Fresh
understand what
produce
you're
is one of
saying,
those. Yeah.
Matteo, but you know, I think that, dollar for dollar, milk costs less than pop. Uh, Juice is the same price as those imitation drinks that people buy. Homemade soup is very inexpensive to make. Sure, you have to have the cooking facilities, and which not everybody has, I agree. But, a lot of it could go a long way to improving people's grocery costs if with a little bit more education. And I know some of the food kitchens around have had cooking classes and things like that, for people to learn how to make soup or stew or chili or spaghetti, from scratch rather than just out of containers where there's a lot of salt and, phosphates and all of those things are added in sugar. So, I think it's a double-edged thing. It's cheaper to make them at home. People don't always know how to do it, and they may not have a stove or, those kinds of implements. But I think, encouraging people to look at those options is important.
I think too, an issue is time, right? I
Yeah.
agree with Mateo. Cost is definitely an issue, but the thing too is if you have to work two full-time jobs just to survive and put food on the table and you don't have energy when you get home to cook, I understand that.
Yeah.
I get that. If you have to have a lunch on the go and you're looking for the cheapest option, it's not going to be healthy. But, so we have to make sure we have a society where people have a couple extra dollars in their pocket and that people can live off 40 hours a week worth of work. It was only 4 or 5 years ago that we were talking about reducing to a 4-day work week. And now people are having to work 80 hours a week to survive.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That has to do a lot with the living wage and the,
Yeah,
the amount that the minimum wage is.
exactly. Yeah. It's funny how it's all tied together, right? Like every
Yeah.
issue that we talk about, it's like that one, if we did it right, would help these three, which would then start helping these things. And it's almost like, if we just start implementing changes in all these different issues, it'll snowball effect into a lot of things getting better
Yeah.
quickly. And
I
I think
get
a lot of people are losing faith in the ability to make change in a positive way, especially with electoral politics and government. But I'm telling you, like it can happen and it can happen quickly. And we just have to get the message out and people on our team because the issues can be solved and we have enough money to solve them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just leaves you kind of wondering how a government that's branded itself as common sense has kind of fumbled every single issue, leading to the snowball effect going in the reverse direction.
Would
Think
you would you
Exactly.
positive,
ever
help is
think
coming.
would you ever think that building a 60-kilometer tunnel under the 401 is common sense?
Yeah, exactly. It's absolutely not. And, they're almost, I'm at the position where it's almost like extreme incompetence or they're doing it on purpose, right? What else could it be? So,
Well, most people would think that was a joke, but it
Yeah.
yeah,
doesn't
Yeah.
appear to be.
I mean,
exactly.
we've had this conversation about it being on purpose with healthcare, right? If healthcare is dysfunctional, there's a conversation about privatization. And I think that could partially be what they're doing.
Oh, for sure.
Making it to the point where people have to think about private options.
Yeah.
It's certainly the case in education as well.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Mateo?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions in the chat.
Okay.
Well, let's
So-
get to these questions. I am
Yeah.
so sorry to keep you waiting, everybody.
Okay, so I'll start. We have a few on housing. Jacqueline Milner asks, how about small prefab homes and communities?
Tiny homes. A lot of the platform the NDP released. What was interesting is when they were talking about some of the stuff in Toronto that they were doing, like letting the house behind the house or allowing fourplexes, like in the Cornwall area, at least, we're like, well, we're already doing that. But a lot of the zoning regulations or blocks that the provincial government has in place, the NDP plan to eliminate that. So there's a lot of like using public land that's underutilized or finding places for co-ops and other initiatives to go in. So not directly tiny homes, Jacqueline, but more like kind of like creating social communities and something that's like tied to maybe like it's more of a Toronto thing when they talk about transit. Understand our ridings are quite rural, but being close to the work that's available brings more qualified people into those smaller communities, and those initiatives as a whole should hopefully make things better.
Mateo, keep going.
Okay. Next question we
Sorry.
have Julia Lucio, who is my mother and who is asking this question from the Dominican Republic.
Oh, hi.
She asks about regulations on Airbnb units. And she goes on to say nobody talks about how that has taken units out of the market.
Yeah, I think that's important to implement. I think out west, they've shown that it can really impact the cost of rents and the availability of supply on the market. So, like I said, I'm really against really large corporations, especially ones that don't pay their fair share here in Canada. So the problem with Airbnb, though, is that it's individuals that buy their investment and list it on there. So we have to find a way to do that and implement it that's sort of fair for everybody, right? Maybe structuring it in over a period of time or some other measures that can be more fair. But I think
I
it
think
has to be on the table for sure.
Yeah.
I think in some areas, municipalities have legislated
Yeah.
licenses for Airbnbs. And just like
Mhm.
they used to have for taxi drivers, right? A
Mhm.
community would say, okay, I can give 100 licenses for Airbnb and we don't go beyond that.
I think
Yeah,
so
great point.
you make a fair point, Luis, because if we remember back to where there's unfortunately disasters because of super shady Airbnbs, like as in Montreal, the municipalities were responding. The municipalities need support, of course, in terms of what to do about this. But municipalities, I believe, in that sort that's like a bylaw zoning initiative. But it's also probably why the NDP has signaled that their rent control is a vacancy control, right? So like basically it's a little bit of this, you're hoping to try to get a lot of money out of one person for a couple of days instead of a consistent income from someone who would regularly rent a place. And it doesn't quite pass the smell test. So there's this kind of this disconnect here. When you use an Airbnb and you're competing for that hotel style rate, it's a difficult conversation about whether it even makes sense versus if you just had a regular tenant. And then working with municipalities, the NDP has signaled that I believe they intend to try to tackle this issue
Yeah.
because this is a big part of where a giant gap or a giant piece of what used to be the rental market vanished. And it doesn't quite resonate, doesn't make any sense. You're right. It was independent people making independent choices, but also articles in the news about that there were corporate interests coming in and taking these. And there's some sort of game that they're playing by controlling that market and forcing that supply and manipulating Airbnb to force the prices up. And that's going to have to be something that we will deal with independently. I would be looking at that as a number one way to try to fix and make the rental system more affordable, at least in my riding.
Okay. Okay, Matteo.
Yeah, we really just have one more, which is more of a comment than a question. And it's from Stefan, who says, costs are mostly an issue because salaries have not been keeping up with the cost of living.
I agree, Stefan.
I
Yeah.
think you have several union people here, and you could see that what has changed is union density in the province. Union density has been going down, so I think that's reflected in lower salaries for everyone, because when a union, negotiates a salary, let's say it's in the steel industry, even the mills that are not unionized will have to
Thanks.
reach that same salary in order to keep workers. So, certainly making it easier for areas or plants or businesses or people to unionize is one thing. And certainly since the 1970s, we've seen a depression of worker wages as related to
Mm.
company profits and cost of living.
Yeah, I agree. And there was big news the other day. I don't know if you guys follow the Best Theratronics
Yeah.
unionized workers protest. So they've been on strike for over 300 days. And through rain, snow, cold, hot, everything, they've been out there. And I drive by them every day. And they were proposed with a 0% rate increase after the highest inflationary period of our lifetime. And they fought and they won 11%. So, it's labor power, it's organizing, it's workers, humans coming together and demanding a fair deal that's gonna fix things in our province.
I also think, Chris, to what you were saying before about the snowball effect, um, salaries, as Stefan was talking about, is kind of maybe the base issue you can talk about there. Because if salaries get to a living point, then that affects, the cost of living. You can pay for rent now. You can pay for groceries now. So I did like salaries are maybe the most important issue here.
Yeah, that's what I talk about that a lot. And what I like to talk about too is worker equity. and just phrase it in that sort of lens. So when society was functioning at its best, like the Roaring Twenties or whatever they called it, the worker equity. So a worker would go to work. If they generated $1 worth of value, they would take home 80, 90 cents of that dollar, and the corporation would take home the rest. Now it's the opposite. A worker goes to work and they take home 20 cents of every dollar of value that they create. So I do a little exercise with my friends and some people sometimes that I'm talking politics with, and I say, if you were a plumber and you just got so many clients you couldn't handle them anymore, and you got your best friend to go and do the plumbing job for you, and they made $1,000, how much of that $1,000 would you take for finding the lead? And they always say, oh, maybe 20%, 15%, 10% is pretty much always the answer. Nobody's ever said more than half. And that's what we're doing right now. These corporations are taking way more than half.
And a lot
I,
of that money is going to pay the CEOs, rates that are astronomical, as much as 1,000 times as much as a worker.
Exactly, because it's hard to find people that are so unscrupulous that would act that way, right? So when you do, you pay them a lot of money to be your CEO.
Unbelievable. So listen, we're sort of edging towards the our hour. So both Chris and Jeremy, um, what makes the NDP the best choice for Ontarians?
We've had a good chance tonight. Chris, would you like to take the floor?
Sure, yeah, I'll let you wrap it up because it's your stream and everything. But the NDP, I see first of all the conservatives and the liberals as almost two sides of the same coin. They're kind of the pro status quo parties. They're both sort of working for wealthy individuals, corporate interests. I see the NDP as the only party that's actually working for the average person, the worker, the middle class. All of their platforms, all of their talking points are to benefit the workers, the people in our communities, the nurses, the teachers. You know, it just they're the only party that's working aggressively for that. So it really attracted me to them, and I feel like every time I meet someone like Jeremy or someone that is even in office, like Joel Harden or Chandra Pasma and those types of people, they're just some of the best, smartest, most driven people that I've ever met in my life. So it's a party that attracts really talented, really smart, hardworking community members to advocate for their communities, and I'm just so excited to be involved. So that's yeah. I could talk more about it, but that's what I'll say.
It has been a
Jeremy?
great opportunity to connect with you, Chris, because yes, it's kindred spirit. It's a like mind. I know in my heart that we can do better, that I am inspired by the NDP and the change that they can bring, understanding that I truly believe in the things that we do together. We're stronger than if we try to do things apart. So the things we do together are the public services that everybody has a basic right to, the opportunity to be healthy, to be trained, well paid, satisfied, and with food on the table and a safe place to live. These are easily attainable when you try. And I believe in Merit Styles in their plan to make that happen. So I am so grateful for the opportunity to take that NDP message out. And with the chance, I will work so hard to make it reality.
All right. Well, listen, it was a wonderful yak. Really a lot of fun having you, Chris.
Thank
We
you.
should
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
we
Chris,
should
you're
do it
awesome.
again. Yeah,
Yes.
it's
What a
terrific.
great guy. Come on,
Thank you. And you
Leeds,
guys too,
Grenville, Rideau
like,
Lakes, Thousand
yeah.
Islands. You see this, right? You see how genuine this man is. This would be an excellent opportunity to make this man an MPP. Why wait?
Well,
Thanks, guys.
hopefully they won't wait, right? For both of you. I'd like to see the two of you
If
elected.
they do wait, we'll both be back next time, right,
That's
Jeremy?
it. I'll
But
be more
Yes.
gray, but I'll still be fired up. I promise
we'll
you.
get there eventually. So stick with us, guys, and you won't be disappointed.
I don't think so. I think that, I think there's no way that they would be disappointed with the platform that we have and the people who are in it. You know, they're genuine people who really want to make things better for people in their community.
I mean, the provinces who have given it a shot have been happy. I believe Wabcanoe is the most approved of Premier
Yeah,
right now.
NDP works.
yeah.
Yep.
It does. So listen, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna say thank you to everybody who watched and participated, and anybody who's gonna watch it afterwards, because the live stream will live on.
Mhm.
And well, that's it. Good night, and you guys stay on for a few seconds, but we're continuing to do our thing right up until the last minute. I feel like I had something I wanted to say and I forgot what it was. Doesn't
Election
matter.
day,
Huh?
Election day.
Election
Get
day,
out
yeah.
to
Mhm.
vote. Take
Yeah.
your friends, take your family, take your neighbors. Remember how good it feels to vote.
I found the note. Okay, early voting is still possible at the Cornwall Square Mall where the old Sears was. Tomorrow, they close tomorrow at 8 p.m. And after that, you have to wait till election day. Voting day is February 27th. You can find the closest poll by going on to elections.on.ca and looking at voter information service. You just type in your postal code and they'll tell you what poll to go to. And if you really need help, just shoot us a message and we'll do it for you and tell you where to go. It doesn't
Chris,
sound
I'd
right.
like to do you a solid. If this sounds right, I just took a quick look at this. 2495 Parkdale Avenue in Brockville, Ontario.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
the local
Perfect.
election office. So for our friends off to the west side, that's where you go. You can do it right away. All you have to bring is your ID. Don't worry about your voter's card. I know as a postman, I'll tell you right now, we're having issues with how those cards got delivered. It's great to get it and use it, but with your ID, with something with your face, something that's a government issued thing with your face on it, and something to prove your address, you could go there now in Brockville to vote for Chris in the Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Reno Lakes district.
And bring a friend. Bring a friend or two and a family member. Bring the whole gang.
and
Yeah.
in,
And if
and
you guys
in,
are interested in volunteering in the future, Jeremy's looking for volunteers, and so is myself. So reach out, check us out on Facebook, get involved. The movement is growing significantly, so get involved. We're happy to have you.
We're fun.
also, if you need a ride on election day, please
Yeah.
message us.
Yes, we have people who will take you to the polls.
That's
Okay?
the sdsgnDP.ca website.
They can ask here as well. They can
Yes.
message us, just
There you
wherever.
go.
There's all kinds of ways of finding us.
Let us know how we can help you get your vote out.
Yeah. All right. So sayonara. Thank you, everybody. Good night.